This is the limitless Keith Lee, and I'm here to ask you to stop what you're doing, take just one moment, and bask in the glory of the Busted Wide Open podcast. Mwah.
You're listening to the Busted Wide Open podcast, dropping the elbow on the hottest topics in sports entertainment and the world of professional wrestling. With your hosts, Nick Howell and Sir Ian Dangerous. Coming to you from the Orbital Jigsaw Network Arena in sunny Southern California. Welcome, patrons, to your April 2020 bonus episode. If you're listening to this episode, it means you freaking rock. It means you're a $10 patron, and it means you're supporting this show in the best way possible. Thank you all. Especially shout out to everybody. Will James, Marshall in the chat. Thank you for tuning in to us doing this live, because Sir Ian Dangerous has been hard at work the last few days breaking this down after that amazing weekend that had. But my name is Nick Howell.
And I am Sir Ian Dangerous, and thank you for the introduction, Nick. Yes, everyone, thank you for joining us today, and thank you guys for your support of this show. We do greatly appreciate it, and it helps bring all of this content to life, and it does keep me up till 5 in the goddamn morning, because that's what I did last night, trying to get this show ready. I fell down a rabbit hole. I fell into a Firefly Funhouse of my own trying to put this together. So this is going to be an interesting show today, Nick, because so after this last weekend, WrestleMania went off, and one of the segments was the Firefly Funhouse match between Bray Wyatt and John Cena.
Yeah.
To call it a match is, of course, a very loose term. It was more like a wrestling fever dream about the career of John Cena, and it was, in some ways, I would actually say one of the most impressive pieces of work to come out of the WWE in a long time, if not, in fact, ever. Not as wrestling, but as something else, as something that is about wrestling, but not necessarily wrestling itself. And I think that's a distinction that has to be understood and appreciated before you can really look at this. This is not, quote unquote, wrestling. At a certain point, this became something else, something that is tangential to wrestling. It stands next to it. But this is more of a meta look at wrestling on one particular character in John Cena, and right. That's actually one thing that I wanted to clarify first, because some people have been trying to dissect this match or criticize it for being a wrestling match, and that's not what it is. That's not what the intention was, and that's not what it should be criticized as. And if you do that, then you're kind of barking up the wrong tree to begin with, and you're going to be disappointed. Yeah. So I just have to throw that out right there. But as a piece of work dissecting one of the most polarizing figures, and certainly one of the largest figures in professional wrestling of the last 15 to 20 years in John Cena, it's a fascinating piece of work. And I think it's legitimately, we can call it a work of art, because it does operate on so many levels where the more that you study it, the more you think about it, the more you get out of it. So that's what we're doing today, Nick. Is we're going to break that down, go through it all, piece by piece, scene by scene, talk about the references, talk about what its bigger meaning might be. Like, what is Wyatt trying to say with it? What is Cena trying to say to it? Because we know that this was put together by not just Bray Wyatt, but also John Cena had a major hand in this.
As well as Bruce Pritchard.
Got
to throw a little nod out there to him.
Possibly Jeremy Borash. Like, we don't know. There's a lot of people who had their fingers in this, but one of the major contributors was John Cena himself. So this was, in a sense, a bit of self-reflection, which actually is an interesting thing to think about when you look at what ultimately this piece did to him, for him, and about him. Yeah. So, Nick, and is there anything more that needs to be said, or should we dive right in?
A little bit of business I wanted to get to for those of you watching this live, or they're going to be listening to this in the next couple of days. Yes, it's called the April episode because we have hard earmarked the March episode for the finale of Nick Booking. And I promise you it's going to be the finale, because I don't know that I ever want to do this again in my life. But we're going to do Nick Booking next week, and we're going to be all caught up, but we're saving that for the March episode. If you're listening to this sometime in the future, 5 years from now, you're not really going to care. You've already listened to Nick Booking. I just wanted to get that out there in case the question came up. Where's the March episode? We just wanted to space these things out in the right way. But if you're listening to this and you're watching this right now on YouTube, hi guys, thank you for joining us.
Howdy.
And thank you for being here in the chat to keep us lively. Another side of this that I wanted to throw out there just for context, I have it open. I have not read Ian's note. He and I have had many conversations since Sunday about this match and about doing this episode, but I'm here, much like he's going to be reacting to Nick Booking, I can't wait to see what he's dug up and react on my own.
It is one of the most extensive notes I've written for this show, if not the most extensive.
I scrolled through it, and I was just like, oh, I'm not even going to try to read that. I want to live in the moment with everybody in the chat, and I'm going to react the same way that you guys do. So, Ian, I am going to hand you the reins. I will react when I react and take us down this rabbit hole, Cheshire Cat.
Let's get into this. So, first of all, before we do get into this, I want to say, I watched this... I've watched the Firefly Funhouse match about 10 times, really got into it, wrote a lot of notes down, had my own personal notes, did a lot of reading on the internet, getting other people's opinions, taking kind of pieces from here and there, things I thought were apt or well put, things I thought that people had thought about things in the right way and weren't just kind of reacting or looking at a small picture. Particular shout out to Paul Bradley at Fansided and Brandon Stroud at Uprocks, who just had some absolutely fantastic breakdowns of what they thought the Wyatt character was in the Funhouse and also what this match was. So shout out to them. And I actually will quote them a couple times directly in this because they had some really good takes on it. I didn't take all of their stuff kind of piecemeal, but I'll point out when I really just, picked right up from them. One thing I want to start this off with is just a couple of quotes. One quote from the actual Firefly Funhouse match, which was, "Who are we really? And why do we do the things we do?" And the other quote I want to start off with is Jeremiah 33:8, which is, "I will cleanse them from all their iniquity by which they have sinned against me. And I will pardon all their iniquities by which they have sinned against me and by which they have transgressed against me." And that's how I want to kind of lead into this because
Amen. Let's
start with setting the stage here. We can't talk about the Firefly Funhouse match without knowing a bit of the history and a bit of the context. And if you know nothing about this, this could actually help you understand what the hell we're talking about too. WrestleMania 30, I thought was just being used during the build-up to this match as a crutch to create story for this match. It turns out it's actually the fulcrum on which this whole presentation turns. It's the spark. It's the moment where everything kind of came together and then blew apart. And WrestleMania 30, in case you don't remember or didn't watch that, there was a match between John Cena and Bray Wyatt at that WrestleMania. And at the time, Bray Wyatt had just been doing his cult leader gimmick for a relatively short period of time. And it was a gimmick where he played kind of this Southern fried Louisiana Bayou preacher man who dressed like Max Cady from Cape Fear with a little hat and a Hawaiian shirt.
It was over as hell, though. The whole audience, the whole world in his hands. And I was into Wyatt family, dude.
And a lot of people were. And that actually became one of the points of this whole thing. But to set the stage, he was a cult leader. By definition, he had a cult. He was the charismatic leader figure of this cult. And he gave you, like all cult leaders do, reasons to distrust authority, reasons to not be invested in the status quo, and wanting, in fact, to bring it down. And as a result, having him face off with John Cena, who at the time very much represented the status quo. He'd been the top guy for 10 years, give or take, and was known as being nearly unbeatable because he would always have to go over because the good guy always triumphs. That's how WWE works.
Right.
So not only was Bray running counter to that, he actually went and directly attacked in his promos what Cena stood for. He attacked him as being a hero of the people, as a children's icon, as a good guy in general. He said, you're not all those things. You're a fake. You're a phony. I'm here to tell them the truth and open up their eyes and show them that you're not a good person. And that actually came to a head in the match where Bray Wyatt actually at one point, knowing that he couldn't physically overpower John Cena, because no one can, he went for another approach and said, I'm not going to physically beat you. I'm going to make you compromise these morals, which I say you don't have. And all these people need to know that you don't truly have, like who you really are. I'm going to show them. And he knelt down on the mat, put his arms wide, and gave John Cena a chair and said, finish me off. Hit me. Show them who you really are. I've gotten so far in your head that I'm going to show them who you really are. But in this match, John Cena threw the chair away and beat Bray Wyatt on his own terms. In that moment, Bray failed. John won. He beat him in that match, and that was Bray Wyatt's first pinfall lost in singles match in WWE. So that's also momentous.
That I didn't know.
That's why it was such a big deal. That was Wyatt's first loss. It was a major loss, and it's the one that kind of cut the legs out from under his character. On this show, we have gone into extensive detail about everything that came afterwards, why that was kind of, it was a downward spiral from there. We've gone into that.
Even though they did strap him after that.
Way after that, 2 years after that.
Yeah.
And that was really a half-assed strapping, if you think about it as well. He got it at Elimination Chamber and lost it at Mania, so he was barely champion. But Bray was the charismatic cult leader. The problem with the cult leader is if their prognostications don't come true, at a certain point you lose faith in your leader, in your messiah, in your guru. If they turn out to be wrong, then how can you follow them? And that's what happened to Bray. He lost all of his followers. He was left alone, and ultimately he ended up falling in with Woken Matt Hardy at the time and his gimmick, and ended up in that being dumped into Matt Hardy's Lake of Reincarnation, which is, of course, we could do a whole dissertation about broken and woken Matt Hardy. But in storyline, that's something that WWE very rarely does, where they go outside of the bounds of traditional reality and just go completely loopy, completely left field. And that's why Matt Hardy's over in AEW right now, is because they weren't willing to go with him on that journey. But if we look at this in kayfabe and canon, Bray Wyatt was dumped in the Lake of Reincarnation, and somewhere while he was in there, he figured out something. He came to a realization. He found a place where he could look at himself, stand back from himself, split himself into all of his component parts, figure out which of these parts was weak, which of them was strong, what his failings were, and he could overcome those failings. He could make himself strong so that he was impervious to pain, while at the same time remaining himself. And that's where we get all the characters for the Firefly Funhouse. That is the Funhouse. So that's the next thing, Nick, is what is the Funhouse? And what's your perception right now? When you think of the Funhouse, what do you think of?
They're former elements of Bray, whether it be Sister Abigail or Husky Harrison. I don't really know where Mercy and Ramblin' Rabbit fit into this as part of his psyche, but I can certainly place Huskus and the pig and Abby the witch. Mm-hmm. The Fiend is sort of this manifestation of the thing that's been trying to get out this whole time.
Right.
And so that's my own interpretation of it. I'd love to hear, like, if you've done some intense research on this, I'd love to hear what you've actually found.
Well, I think it's fairly straightforward. There might be some more stuff that we have yet to see, but what we definitely know is there's this Mr. Rogers persona. He's created a world where there's a children's television show, and he's the host, like a Mr. Rogers, like a Pee Wee Herman. It's like a Pee Wee's
Playhouse. We call him Funhouse Bray.
Sure, right? But it's a little safe environment where there's puppets and it's all fun and games, and even death isn't permanent. He's killed Ramblin' Rabbit a couple of times, and Rabbit keeps coming back. But it is kind of like a sinister children's show. The idea being that he's now gone from trying to become a cult leader to adults. He was always interested in children, and making them join his ideology and getting over with them. But now it's specific. He's not trying to convert adults anymore. He's trying to get into the heads of children when they're young and impressionable. I saw it referred to as kind of like the satanic panic of the 70s and 80s, right? Yeah. Now he's that figure. Now he's Ozzy Osbourne. Now he's Anton LaVey. Now he's trying to get into the minds of children and basically get them while they're still malleable. But not just that. He has the power to, get inside your head. And with anybody, it's one of the things he's discovered. So you have him as Mr. Rogers. He's weak. He's not a fighter. He's emotionally vulnerable. Like we've seen him as Mr. Rogers get sad, cry, be weak, plead with people to not do things. Like that's Bray's emotions. That's his, his vulnerability. He's made himself very vulnerable in one character. You have the puppets. You have Abby the Witch, as you said, it's Sister Abigail. She always asks to be allowed to rest, but he keeps bringing her back, whether that's in kayfabe that he keeps resurrecting this, supposed sister of his, or it was a witch mentor when he was a child that he's kind of referred to, or whether that's her being the gimmick and he just can't let the gimmick rest for some reason. We don't know if there's multiple levels there. Mercy the Buzzard is a reference to Waylon Mercy, who was a wrestler, a character back in the 80s, who Wyatt based his Louisiana swamp gimmick on with the Hawaiian shirts and the way of talking. And he's very vicious. He's a very violent character. It's a lot of Wyatt's lash out tendencies. It could just be, his projecting why he wanted to be that. And definitely based on, even the Waylon Mercy character was based on the Max Cady character from Cape Fear, Robert De Niro in Cape Fear, which is interesting to note because there's a scene in that movie where they try to beat down Max Cady, and they can't do it. He gets beat with he grabs a bike chain, kicks everyone's ass because they can't beat him down. They can't stop him. Right. So it's interesting to note that. You've got Huskus the Pig Boy, which is a pretty direct. You know what that is? That's his shame at his body type. It's representative of Husky Harris, which was his first main roster gimmick. Yeah. Which is basically just like, hey, you're fat. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, Fat Bo Dallas.
Right. So it's a self-loathing. It's the self-loathing that he has himself. It's why that they had the Muscle Man dance. That was really fun at the one episode where it was all about trying to poke fun at the fact that he is now evolved past being ashamed of his own body, even though it's still there. It lives there. It might even be like a darkly comic look at how Vince may see him. And there's a lot of Vince in this, and I want to keep coming back to Vince because Vince's perception and Vince's shadow is cast over a lot of this. So Huskus is basically him externalizing and facing his insecurities about his weight. Ramblin' Rabbit, I could never figure out, Nick. I always had trouble figuring out exactly what Ramblin' Rabbit was. Okay. Something about his innocence, but I thought that was also a little bit in his Mr. Rogers character. And then I think it was it might have been Brandon Stroud, but he posited that Ramblin' Rabbit could be a representation of Bray's love of wrestling. No matter how many times he's killed, he always comes back. He loves faces. He's like, oh man, Finn Balor, I love you. John Cena, I love you. You're awesome. Right? So it could be representative of that. It's his love of wrestling that can just never die.
That hits home. I like that.
I like that too. I like that interpretation of it. And it does actually work when you start looking at Rabbit in all these scenarios. He even blends him up. Like, what's the cure to John Cena? Throw your love of wrestling into a blender and drink it with a bunch of other stuff. Like, wow. It does kind of work.
That's meta metaphor. AF right there.
Yeah. So that's a pretty awesome take on it.
Or as Keanu would say, whoa.
Whoa. There's going to be a few woes, I hope, in this. I had some last night while I was tipping back a couple and writing this. So Mr. McBossman, of course, is a Vince analog.
Mr. McBossman. I love that.
I do too. It's a satirical cartoon of Mr. McMahon. I find it's very internet meme based. Like, it's a lot of kind of poking at the smarks, at the Redditors, throwing out a lot of the lines that we always accuse Vince of saying. You are fired, and the rest, that sort of thing, right? It has the devil horns on him. So very satirical take on Vince McMahon. Maybe how the public perceives him. And finally, the Fiend is the final character of the whole thing. He's unstoppable. He's evil. And quote, according to Bray, according to Mr. Rogers Bray, he remembers everything. He is vengeance. He's like Ghost Rider, right? He is the part of Bray that he's separated out, has made invulnerable because he feels no pain. All the pain is now in Mr. Rogers Bray. Fiend feels no pain. He's no remorse. He's just revenge. That's all he is. And that's all he's been used as, is getting vengeance against those who've wronged Bray, whether that's Daniel Bryan, whether that's Seth Rollins, or now John Cena. They're stalking him, right? They're stalking Cena. So as we find in the Firefly Funhouse segment, the actual set, the set of the Firefly Funhouse is not all there is to this world. The door leads somewhere. But the question is, where does it lead? Inside, it's safe to talk and, play and whatever. But outside, what is that? Is that what Bray Wyatt found when he went to the Lake of Reincarnation? Is it a place where he can regard his own psyche, where anyone is separated from themselves and gets to regard their own psyche and fight with themselves and either destroy themselves or confront their own demons, and by confronting, become something else?
Is it that what's out there? Like the Matrix, where
exactly
something where your power is limitless, right? And
correct, or your power is limitless, but it's also your power to destroy yourself is limitless.
Yeah.
Is it? And he has created this bubble. If you die in the
Matrix, you die in real life.
You die in real life. Exactly. So is the Firefly House, there's the set, a little like safe place that he's constructed within this larger space that is, for the moment, it's not chaos. Outside is swirling chaos, but inside he's ordered it, he's structured it into this show with the different aspects of his personality living there. Is that essentially his cocoon, his head? So that's, and it's also worth noting that in the first couple episodes, he did destroy his old iconography, cut his old cardboard, cutout of himself. He cut that in two, saying, I've destroyed my old self. He comes out, holding the lantern of his old head, the head that he had when he was the cult leader. He'll look at it and say, you tried, you failed, now it's my turn, right? He's destroyed his old self, split it into these component parts, and each one of them is their own little entity.
Damn.
So did he go there and essentially win? Did he pass the test? And that's why he has so much power now. That's why the Fiend is so powerful, because he was able to pass this test that is the Funhouse, in a sense. So is that what he is essentially saying?
Meaning that he could harness the power of the Fiend?
Meaning that the Fiend is a tool, right? The Fiend is a part of him. And he gained the power of being the Fiend by being able to pull away his weaknesses, all his insecurities, which are represented by the puppets, his doubts, his brash ideas, like Mercy the Buzzard is just violence without reason. Whereas the Fiend always has a reason for his violence. He pulled those aspects out of himself and left the Fiend as being this superpowered entity that has no weaknesses because he separated all the weaknesses out. Right? So that's just speculation on what the Funhouse is. If that's the case, is this segment where he fights John Cena, the John Cena match, is it Wyatt actually fighting John Cena, or did all he have to do was bring John Cena to this place and just let him free?
So that he would self-destruct in a way.
So starting with that's the concepts I want to start with before we actually break down this match. Now I want to go through and break down this match.
Fantastic.
All right. So 20 minutes and we've just set up everything.
Nice.
All right. So let's talk about how this match started. We had some build up for it. We had Bray confronting John and saying, John, if you do this, it's going to be a slaughter. We have John calling out Bray this last SmackDown and saying, let me find the quote. He said, this WrestleMania match is going to accomplish what should have happened 6 years ago. ending the existence of the most overhyped, overvalued, overprivileged WWE superstar in existence. And when he said that about Bray, we were just like, damn, dude, taking shots at Bray.
Hot fire, mic drop.
Hot fire, and he mic dropped it, and then the Fiend, showed up, and Bray whispered in his ear, "Let me in."
Did I think that John Cena would ever be talking about himself by saying that?
So let's wait on that, because that's exactly why I bring that up. Is that what a great final line to lead us into this and think, okay, John Cena is going to go prove that Bray Wyatt is overhyped, and he's going to finish the job that he started at WrestleMania 30.
Right.
And also vice versa, Wyatt just wants to avenge WrestleMania 30. Okay, that's the bare bones we came into this with, not knowing what we were in for. So let's go down what happens. John enters the arena at WrestleMania. He's initially kind of like mugging, like, look at this crowd. What a great crowd. There's no crowd there, which is right off the bat, that's John Cena out of his depth, because he feeds off the crowd, right? He's one of those old school faces that the crowd hulks him up. It feeds his energy. So there's no crowd, but he looks at the camera and he goes, "Oh, there you guys are. What do you know? Okay, let's get this on with." And he goes, "This is welcome to," and it cuts him off right as he's in the middle of saying, "Welcome to WrestleMania." And it cuts to images of Vince and Mean Gene saying it, referencing history, foreshadowing we're going to be looking at history. This is about history as much as it is about right now.
Right.
And we have, flash, 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 and we get the Firefly Funhouse logo, and now we're in a TV show. Now we're no longer watching a wrestling match. Now it's establishing we're watching a TV show. We're coming into the world of this TV show, and there's Bray Wyatt in the Firefly Funhouse set, and he says, this is his promo that he leads us off with. He says, "There's another world that exists beyond our realm of comprehension." And meanwhile, there's like Twilight Zone-ish kind of music going, right? Like a theremin.
In a world.
In a world. Yeah. He says, "A place where our darkest urges are no longer kept secret. A world where gods, monsters, angels, and demons are neighbors. Who are we really? And why do we do the things we do?" And then there's a little noise going bing, like an idea. So basically, this is what I was referring to when I said, what is the Firefly Funhouse? It's the psyche. It's your internal psyche. And that's what he's referring to here. He finishes by saying, "Hey, John, let's take a real deep look at who you really are. You're about to face your most dangerous opponent yet, yourself." It's pretty straightforward. To me, it seems very clear. We're about to jump into the psyche, capital P, psyche.
Yeah.
Of John Cena.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to face himself. And then Wyatt leaves through the door, which now says, "Abandon all hope, ye who exit here," which is a nice twist on the line from Dante's Inferno when Dante is making his way into hell. When he passes from limbo, which is where all of the unchristened souls live, like Aristotle and Plato, he goes through these gates. And above them, they say, "Lasciate ogni speranza, voi contrate," which basically translates to, it's not apples for apples, but "abandon all hope, ye who enter here." So he changed it to "Chi esce qui," which is he who exits here, which I thought was cute. Does that mean that he is leaving hell? I'm not sure, but I'm going to discuss that later on at the end of this, because I think that's a point that I want to come back to. Is what he's saying there. And then John warps into the funhouse room. We pull back, and John's standing there kind of looking like, all right, this is weird. And the kids cheer for him. There's a kid sound effect that, Bray has, but the kids cheer for John. He's still their hero here, right? And Ramblin' Rabbit pops up and says, "Hey, John, go through the door, but be careful." So John goes through the door, and now everything is in darkness. Now, whether this darkness is meant to mean it's the darkness before all things, it's the darkness before the beginning, or if it was just a story trope, that's open to interpretation. But you could say that before there was John Cena, there was darkness, right? Yeah. Because this ends up being a journey through John's career.
Some Big Bang Theory kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the only thing there before John Cena was Vince McMahon. And the Vince puppet pops up and basically gives a sort of like a minimal version of the speech that the actual Vince McMahon gave on June 24th, 2002, where he challenged everyone in the locker room to step up and show that they had ruthless aggression, essentially because he'd lost all of his big draws and he needed a new big draw. And this was his way of kind of smudging kayfabe and saying, yo, guys, step up, impress me, grab the brass ring, right?
And if you've seen the Ruthless Aggression series on the WWE Network, this is where they've got everybody standing around the ring, the whole roster's out there, and him just pacing around in circles, saying this thing over and over and over again, ruthless aggression, ruthless aggression.
Right.
And then they even play it as part of like the intro. It's like his speech is the intro of the entire show. So I thought it was very apropos that he would keep asking him over and over and over again the same way.
Yeah, and it's funny that the chicken and the egg situation of this was, we're having this breakdown of John Cena's character. A lot of it has to do with the ruthless aggression era, and we'll get into that in a second. But for it to come out at the same time as this ruthless aggression documentary, it's almost too perfect, right? Because now we're being remembered of what that was like. We're being reminded of what that was like. And so now this hits home a little bit more. You've got the Vince puppet, and he says, John Cena, do you have enough ruthless aggression to reach for the stars as you never have before? Do you have enough ruthless aggression to excel beyond your wildest dreams? Do you have enough ruthless aggression to make the necessary sacrifices of mind, body, and soul in order to be a success in this company? And I want to highlight that because, as we'll find out, there are 3 lessons that Bray Wyatt takes John Cena through. Ooh. And you could even say that those 3 lessons break down to the mind, the body, and the soul.
Damn.
The 3 things that John Cena had to sacrifice to become John Cena. So we'll get into that in a second. But just remember that he says, do you have enough ruthless aggression to make the necessary sacrifices of mind, body, and soul in order to become a success in this company? Show me or you're fired. Ha ha ha. So we could say metaphorically that is the impetus. That's the beginning of John Cena, was that speech, taking him from being the prototype to being John Cena. And so then that's the end of the beginning. Now the match begins because, boom, we cut to Wyatt being in the ring, and he's intercut with clips of Kurt Angle on June 27th, 2002, which is 3 days after that speech that Vince gave. And Kurt out in the ring saying, I am issuing an open challenge for anyone in that locker room to come on down here and face, instead of saying Kurt Angle, he says Bray Wyatt. And so, of course, who comes out but John Cena? Not only we see the clips of him coming out in 2002, and it's interspersed with him now coming out in his old original ring gear, the neon trunks and everything.
And the fist.
And the oh yeah,
from
the SmackDown. They dug up the SmackDown fist out of the WWE warehouse and put it on the set so John Cena could walk out in front of it, which was cute. They didn't use his actual original music, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if they don't have the rights to it, but they had like something that was similar to his initial music, but not the same. So he comes out in his debut outfit, having the same expression and stalking to the ring. And just like what happened with Kurt Angle, Wyatt says, what do you think that you have that allows you to face me? And John Cena screams, ruthless aggression, and he tries to punch him. But instead of hitting Kurt in the face, Wyatt ducks. So you could say that that's metaphorical for Cena's first gimmick not connecting with the audience. That might be a bit of a stretch, but he misses the mark here. And that could be, this could be representing his fear, his regret, in that Ruthless Aggression documentary, he calls it the biggest mistake of his career.
Yep.
Was this whole thing.
The thing that almost got him fired. He had no
nothing
gimmick.
else.
Yep.
He had nothing else besides this. He had trunks that he could change to match the sports teams or whatever town he was in. That was his gimmick.
He was a good promo in OVW. That was it. Really. Yeah. And he was jacked. But that was kind of his identity. He had generic music, and he had no real gimmick other than like neon trunks and knee pads.
He was generic, and this is his insecurity about that time, about it not connecting, about swinging and missing. And in the first time he misses, Bray pops back up and says, "Who actually thought this was going to work? I'm not going to lie, this is pretty embarrassing. And that's kind of a shot, too, because Wyatt's first gimmick, Husky Harris, who thought that was going to work? Right? So this Bray's already overcome this at this point. He's past this. He's dealt with his own demon about this. But now he sees in John Cena, he's like, I know how this feels. I got you right here. John Cena swings and misses again. Ruthless aggression. Swings and misses. And Wyatt goes, I'm literally living your biggest failure right now. And I'm not going to lie. It's sad. You can see why you almost got fired, right? This isn't working. But John is just so determined to make it work. He swings again. He goes trying to hit him again. Wyatt ducks again and pops back up singing Nikki Bella's theme song. You can look, but you can't touch, right? You can look, but you can't touch. Which right there, he's just throwing a little jab at one of John's other possible insecurities or weaknesses.
Failures.
Yeah. John Cena's marriage falls apart. He ends up dating Nikki Bella for years. But his fear of commitment, his workaholicness, that he became workaholic John. He became hardworking John after his marriage broke up. That's where workhorse John came from. And that's also the reason he's used to break up with Nikki Bella. And he was notoriously controlling of her. You kind of saw an exaggerated version on Total Bellas, but he was controlling. He was non-committal. And ultimately, she was just like, okay, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm going to go bang my dance instructor on Dancing with the Stars. Yeah, I'm out of here. So that's definitely that's a low jab there to bring her up, and it's definitely another thing that might be a weakness of his. And so he takes it seriously. He swings again, misses again, and Wyatt says, "Is this really what you want to do with your life?" And that's when we start cutting to clips of John as a kid, holding a belt, doing wrestling moves, right? Essentially saying, yes, he's wanted it since he was a child. And this is how he almost lost it. This is where that dream almost died. So yes, this is a sore spot for him. And he yells at Bray, and he chases him out of the ring. And then we go back to the 80s. We go back to the time when John Cena would have been that little boy, when he would have been that guy holding the belt. This is the iconography that led him to that point. So these two things, I think, are connected.
So this is the part where I kind of lost the thread a little bit. I didn't quite understand why we went back in time where we did.
So think about it this way. John Cena was born in 1977.
Same.
That means perfect. So when you were a kid, what do you remember about WWE? Do you remember these, like Saturday night main event, Hogan?
I don't remember the names of the shows or anything. It was Hogan, Andre, Sheik, Piper. You know, I remember the names, not the shows that I was watching. They were larger than life figures. Before I understood what celebrities were, besides Michael Jackson at the time.
That would be the same people that John Cena was watching when he was a kid, watching wrestling and being impressionable and thinking, oh, these are the guys who I want to be like. What made him a wrestling fan? What brought him to that point where he was coming out as John Cena and threatening and punching Kurt Angle and wearing the stupid little tights and almost failing? What brought him there was his love for that 80s wrestling. So we go back to that. He said, Bray says, is this really what you want to do with your life? And John Cena flashes back. Bray takes us back to where John Cena fell in love with it, the 80s. And we get we get Macho Mercy. We have Mercy the Buzzard dressed up as Macho Man Randy Savage, and Mr. McBossman at commentary, which is ironic because the only time they were on commentary together was in 1993, I believe. So this would have been before. Like we're going back before Saturday Night Main Event ended in '92. So a little bit of
Jesse Ventura before that in Saturday Night Main Event, wasn't it?
Yeah. So they fudged history a little bit, but who cares? It's fun, right? And I thought it was also, I think it's also funny that you've got Macho Man next to the Vince McMahon puppet, because that might have been a little poke at Vince for how he treated Savage. Because remember, he drove Savage off by putting him on commentary and making him give up his career. So might have been a little shot at McMahon there, but I'll get back to that a little bit later on. So again, as you said, who are the people that you loved back in the 80s? We saw the title card of Saturday Night Main Event. We see pics of Hogan. We see Rowdy Roddy Piper. We see Piper hitting Superfly with a coconut. You see Terry Funk for a second. And then Mercy the Buzzard, because Waylon Mercy would have been around at that time. King Kong Bundy with Big John Studd. You see Ricky Steamboat hitting Don Morocco. You got Mr. T. You have Hogan again. Lots of Hogan. And then you cut to Bray Wyatt being behind that big blue steel cage and acting like Hulk Hogan. It was never directly drawn that Bray was playing Hulk in this moment, but he kept saying brother and talking like Hulk Hogan. So I kind of feel like it's there, because one of the things they do draw a lot in this is comparisons between John Cena and Hulk Hogan. He looked up to the guys of this time in the 80s, body guys.
Yeah.
Guys who came out, didn't matter what they said in a promo, they looked great. Right? And what does Cena come out doing?
Curls.
He comes out doing curls, but also
curls.
saying like all of these kind of silly promo 80s catchphrases, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, because the fact of the matter is, when the rubber hits the road, the cream rises to the top, Macho Man. Somebody say something about WrestleMania day and night, you're going to pay for the whole seat and only use the edge, right? It's a whole bunch of just 80s stuff.
Well,
and
let me tell you something, Mean Gene.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
But Wyatt starts off saying, "What's up, brothers? My tag team partner is such a physical specimen, you can't help but worship him." Why? Because that's what being a stud is all about. Having muscles. No matter what little talent you possess, that, my friends, is what tag partner Johnny Largemeat is all about. He's talking about John Cena. Wait till you see that body. Wow. That is why all the ladies want him and all the men want to be him. That's the lesson John Cena took from the 80s. Get into bodybuilding.
Yep.
Right? This is insulting his bodybuilding. This is his insecurity about his body. Now Wyatt is attacking John Cena's body and why he got there. John got into wrestling because he came in as a body dude because he thought that's what was wanted. And where did that lead him? You've got John doing the curls now in this scene so relentlessly. Wyatt staring at him. Sister Abby staring at him. They can't believe his body, right? And he does it so much that his arms don't work. Is that because there's some sort of demasculinization happening here? Like he can't get it up anymore, right?
So what I'll say is, as someone that kind of orbited around that strongman / bodybuilding stuff in the 90s, behind almost every, I don't want to talk in absolutes. It's not everybody.
Sure.
But behind most people that are into bodybuilding is an insecure, scrawny little kid that got bullied.
Yep.
And I'm not saying all of them. Obviously, the Mountain, people like Braun Strowman, people like Mark Henry, they're just massive genetic specimens.
Sure.
But when you look at someone that's 6 foot tall, average height, and most of them have come from those times where they were insecure and being bullied. And
did you watch the newest Dark Side of the Ring about Brawl for All? Bart Gunn.
I haven't seen it yet. It just came out Tuesday.
Bart Gunn straight up says, I was a skinny kid. I got bullied. And when I got big, I put on some muscle, went back, and then they weren't bullying me anymore. They were the ones getting bullied.
Yep.
Yeah. The tables turned.
Yep.
So, yeah, absolutely. Which is interesting considering where we're going with this as far as the nature of bullying, right? John Cena had to compensate. He had to overcompensate. And as a result, did he become the bullier? So we'll get to that. But here we are in the 80s. Hogan was the standard.
Yep.
And if you look at historically, if you look through the lens of history, at the time Hogan worked, I'm going to talk about Hogan real quick. At the time, Hogan was the biggest thing because he represented everything that was the ideal in America at the time, right? He was independent. He did his own thing. He was the biggest. He was the strongest. And the only guys that were fed to him were giants that were bigger than him, but not as in shape, fat guys, foreigners, little weasels, right? He didn't fight Big John Studd. He didn't fight other big muscly dudes.
Right.
He fought guys who were, you would look at and either be afraid for Hogan or you'd think, yeah, Hogan, get him. But he didn't have a whole lot of friends. He would turn on his friends a lot. He'd be out for number one. Throughout his career, there's so many examples of Hogan making sure, and this is in kayfabe, not even behind the scenes where it was really going on, but he'd always make sure that Hogan got his. He was never sympathetic to his friends. He never was, you know, he never was understanding. Remember when the mega powers exploded? It's because he was legitimately hitting on Miss Elizabeth. He was causing an awkward situation for Randy Savage. But instead of trying to work it out and say, yeah, man, hey, dude, I probably am being a little bit too touchy-feely on your wife. Let me back off. He's like, no, brother, you're the asshole. And for some reason, Randy was the asshole. And that happened a lot. That's what Hogan was. That's kind of what John Cena became. And we're going to get into that because this is pointing out how John Cena was trying to fit into the mold of Hulk Hogan, who was the man. Vince was looking for another Stone Cold. John Cena gave him another Hulk Hogan. So
interesting.
So here you have John Cena.
I'm wondering where you're going to go with this, by the way, because it is pretty heavily rumored that John Cena pretty much ran through the women's locker room. In the sense of, you know, making those references to Hogan and Miss Elizabeth, I'm sitting here going, yeah. I'm not going to draw too many parallels with that. I think the Nikki Bella one was the only jibe at that. No, I know what you mean. I just wanted to throw that one out there myself.
Yeah.
It's an interesting jab at to try to align with what Hogan was doing with Miss Elizabeth, because I'm not. Listen, if I doubt Miss Elizabeth was the only one drawing the ire of Hulk Hogan.
No, that's a whole separate thing. That's just I'm talking about in storyline as far as Hulk Hogan goes.
I get it.
There's a lot of times where he would, you know, make sure that Hulk won the title, or he wouldn't give his friends shot. We could go down. That's a whole thing. I don't want to waste too much time on it. The bottom line is I'm trying to point out is that Hulk Hogan could only work in 80s America, right? He was an image of manhood, masculinity, and self-obsession that could only work in the 80s. But that's what John Cena came up idolizing, according to this bit here, right? Who were you impressed by as a kid, John Cena? Who did you want to be? You say you always wanted to do this? Why? It's because what you were seeing in the 80s. What did that teach you? Work out until your arms don't work. Work out until you can't get it up, and until that virility is gone, or you're afraid that it'll be gone.
Right.
Right. Maybe it's showing a fear of that. And I love the little note, Vince McMahon, the Vince puppet screaming, "Keep your hands up," when he can't put his arms up, which I thought might be a reference to, and it's completely, you know, tangential, nothing to do with this piece, but I thought it was a reference to the fact that Vince notoriously told RVD to keep his hands up with the chair shots. Right? That was he was always, "Keep your hands up. When they do the chair shots, keep your hands up." RVD was like, nah, it's fine. And Vince telling him, "I'm dad, damn it. I'm the father. I tell you what to do.
Right.
Protect yourself." So then Wyatt stops the whole thing, and I think delivers the line that to me was kind of summing all this up. And that is, "What you gonna do, brother?" Directly making the reference to Hulk Hogan. "What you gonna do, brother, when you realize that egomania has been running wild on you?" So, and in an attempt to show that he is as big and as strong and as muscly as the top guys of the past, to try to create that new character that he ultimately initially failed on, he was going to sacrifice his body, his love life, by extension, and also his perspective of reasonable achievement. So that's lesson number one, the body, right? You sacrificed your body for this.
Damn.
So then the next one, the match continues. We go back to the SmackDown fist, and he's the doctor of thugonomics, right? Now he's rapping John Cena. So he comes out to the ring wearing, by the way, a Yankees shirt, which I thought was hilarious considering that that's what CM Punk called him in 2011 when he said, "John Cena, you think you're the folk hero, you think you're the Red Sox, you're the Yankees, dude. You become the dynasty." And John Cena punched him. Remember, that was a great line. But now he's embracing it. He's coming out wearing the Yankees shirt. So basically saying, you know, once you were America's hero, now you're a sellout, now you're a fraud, etc. And now he can only speak in rhyme. And he realizes this fairly quickly. Okay, all right, here's the joke of this round. I can only speak in rhyme, but don't worry, I can still get you, even though I can only speak in rhyme, because that's what I used to do. So now he's using his head. He's using his mind. But the question is the meanness in his rhymes coming because are they coming from his own insecurities? And that's where this whole thing, I think, leads. So he makes a boner joke. He says the audience is excited. They just went from 6 to midnight. And the kid's kind of like, I'm not sure what that means, but I think it was a boner joke, right? And Wyatt kind of looks at us like, yeah, it's going to be like that. He continued, he keeps talking. He says, I still shine. You ain't taking away my limelight. And we hear crickets, which might be, implying that he was afraid of this failing, of this, what happens when you make these lines and people just kind of go, that sucked. And then he starts going for Bray with it. He says, unlike Husky Harris, this is a weight that I can manage. I can still use it to my advantage. Unlike Husky Harris, it's a weight that I can manage. And Bray gets a look in his face like, there it is.
Yeah.
Here we go. He's falling into the old trap. John Cena is here with nothing but himself, and he's falling into this trap. It's just me and him. And all he can do is insult somebody else for their appearance, for their failures, right? I got a great idea for your puppet show. Put my junk in a glove. You can call it Mr. Suck It, Bro. Somewhere Mick Foley is sitting there going, so he talked about me, mentioned me. You've been a failure ever since they brought you to the dance. You're a slut for opportunity. You're blowing every chance. Is that John Cena before he gets the Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick that he's talking about there, or is he talking about Bray?
You've been a failure ever since they brought you to the dance.
You're a slut for opportunity. You're blowing every chance. Is that him before he finds Thugonomics? Is that him as he's starting it up?
Possibly, because they do go into that quite a bit.
And there's a number of times where Cena
ruthless
talks about
aggression
himself.
Thing. Yeah.
Right. Where there's a lot of times in this where you feel like Cena is trying to take shots at Bray, but he's really pointing the finger back at himself.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
And then as soon as he finishes all his lines, he says, "Run." Now, I'm not sure if that was him mocking the Fiend or him trying to show that the Fiend was taking over his mind. I'm not going to look at it too hard. I don't want to microanalyze too much. Too late.
Yeah.
So Bray sits there and takes all this, right? He's heard it all before. He's been through this. He's been through the Funhouse. This doesn't get to him anymore. But it's the Mr. Rogers Bray. That Bray still feels, right? He still can be hurt. It's not going to destroy him, but he feels it. So he says back to John, he says, chances. How dare you talk to me about chances, John Cena? I've had to earn every chance in life, and still they're taken from me. Like WrestleMania 30, like the Randy Orton stuff, like his whole initial Bray Wyatt run, Husky Harris run, taken from him. But you're the golden goose, John. Your chances, they're unlimited. You're untouchable. But you're not a hero, John. You're a bully. You're a horrible person. You take the weaknesses of others and you turn them into jokes. You do anything for fame. Congratulations. You're the man now, John. Poor, lonely John Cena. This is your last chance, man. The floor is yours. Basically saying the devil's come to collect now. All of this meanness, all this braggadocio, all of the insults aren't going to save him here. They saved his career. He went to the lowest common denominator, the lowest possible floor of entertainment to save his career. And he did it at the expense of others. He did it by becoming a bully. That's how he saved his career. But he presents himself as a hero now. Is that what a hero does?
No.
So here's your last chance to prove, John, that you're a hero. To say something nice. To do something nice. And John takes a moment and thinks about it, and this ugly look comes over his face. And he's let's see.
Something about nuts in your face.
Yeah, he says, how about take these nuts? He said, can John rise above his mean past? He can't. You in the doctor's house trying to get up in my face? All you're going to get is these nuts up in your face. And he throws this tiny little bag of nuts at Bray, which I thought was telling. So just to recap, he couldn't be Hulk Hogan, which is the selfish hero. So he's instead, which is what the initial John Cena was, the ruthless aggression. He couldn't do it. So he's going to be the funny asshole. So if I can't do it, nobody can, if I can do it, You all can do it. If you can't, you're weak, which is a very Vince mentality too. Another little kind of shot at the Vince mentality there. So he can't rise above it. And ultimately, he attacks Bray in the corner. Bray teleports to the middle of the ring. And because he's won this round, the round of the mind, he hits him in the head with John's own chain from around his neck.
Which he somehow like warped off as John ran at him.
Right. So that's a failure of the mind. And now the mind has been taken. Like now we've proven that John has failed with the body, or he's insecure about the body. He's failed the mind because of his insecurities. And that's the second lesson that's complete.
Damn.
Bray won the first 2 rounds. And now we go to round 3.
Well, before you get into round 3, I got to do a little shout out. Cal Cotton with $30 in the tip jar.
Damn, Cal. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. He says, this breakdown is awesome. Cena versus Kurt was literally my first wrestling match and where I fell in love with wrestling and cheered Cena and Eddie and all guys who learned from others' mistakes but made mistakes of their own, so it hits really close to home. Wish you could say more. Yeah, I feel you there, man.
Wow.
It's funny you said it was your first. That was kind of the beginning of the end for me before I took a big break in the second half of the 2000s.
Sure. I hated the Thugonomics gimmick myself.
I hated most of the OVW stuff. It felt like a lot of early FCW stuff that was being brought onto the main roster when we wanted was Cena and Punk and that kind of stuff. And it was eerily similar back in 2012, 2013 when that was starting to happen. All I thought about was, this is deja vu. I've been through this before with Cornette and OVW and people coming up. Like, what are we going to get? Generic John Cena in his neon trunks all over again? Seth Rollins. But at the same time, you know, it's interesting for people to go through these different eras in different ways. It always fascinates me to no end of how people experience wrestling differently.
Yeah.
Something I've always, been fascinated by. So thank you again, Kyle, for $30.
Absolutely. And Kyle, thank you so much, man. I love how people experience it differently too. And that's actually one thing that I think this segment really brings into crystal clarity. This is not for everybody.
No. Like I said on the show, this is for us. This is people that have been in this for 40 years. We were in it in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. We've been along this whole journey.
It's a lot of history. Yeah.
It's a lot of inside baseball.
But that's also why I wanted to talk about it, because I think I think there's a lot more people that would get it if certain aspects of it were pointed out, or if we really discussed what maybe they were trying to say with this.
Yeah.
And in some sense, it's even beyond wrestling because it's about a character. It's 15 years, 18 years of story we're summing up in this and putting a new spin on. So in that sense, it's something that I haven't seen in WWE in a long time, which is long-term storytelling. We were talking about how great it was that Naito had like an 7 or 8 year story that has happened in New Japan. This is longer than that, and they're summing it up in 4 minutes, 5 minutes, however long, 8 minutes, whatever long this was. I'm losing track of time thanks to being stuck in my house. But okay, so let's get to the third part, part 3.
Okay.
The one that I'm positing is now about John's soul. Mind, body, and soul. Why did he sacrifice his soul? So, or rather, this is also a question and answer. And the question is, why didn't you turn heel, John? So the question is posited. We start off with Bray and his rocking chair. He's now Swamp Cult Bray again. And we started intercutting as he's describing the events of it. We start intercutting with that WrestleMania 30 match. Now we've caught up to what was initially proposed as the impetus for this feud. Oh, Bray's got to get his win back from WrestleMania 30. Well, here we are. We're at WrestleMania 30. And Bray, what he tells us is not that I want my win back. It's you had an opportunity here, John, and you failed.
To do the right thing by putting him over is what he's implying.
Right.
Yep.
And his speech is awesome. And there's a couple of little nuances that they do here that I freaking made me do a backflip when I realized it. Bray says, I was the color red in a world full of black and white. It's his way of saying his gimmick stood out. He was unlike anything else at the time in WWE. And exactly. That's why everyone gravitated into him so much. Yep. Everyone's like, what is this? What is this character? What is this gimmick? This is freaking awesome. Everything about it was new. You come out in darkness to like this quiet, mellow, bluesy song. A guy's carrying a lantern, no big lights. right? It's a whole different thing. He said, I had the whole world in my hands. Abigail spoke of this day my entire life. You were supposed to be a man of the people. Then why weren't you listening? And it cuts to the crowd at WrestleMania 30 all singing Bray's song. He's got the whole world in his hands, everyone waving their hands, right? He was over as hell. He says, you were supposed to be the man of the people, then why weren't you listening? Hear them now, John. They wanted me. They needed me. This was supposed to be a prophecy fulfilled, but instead, it's my grandest failure, which is, from a retconning standpoint, Nick, that's awesome, right? Because at the time, we were all saying that's the wrong decision. John should have put him over, so he's going to be the biggest thing this company has.
Yep.
And looking at it in hindsight, it was a booking failure. Because you could have done huge things with that Wyatt character, but he never recovered from that. No. And as we've always said, if you're going to have a cult leader, their prophecies have to come true. And now he's admitting, yep, I wasn't a good cult leader because my prophecies didn't come true. John didn't do what I thought he was going to do. I didn't think he was going to listen to the people and have the soul, have the integrity to do what I wanted him to do. And I love that this works on a couple of different levels of like kayfabe and reality, and it's very
And there's
meta.
one other thing I want to throw in here. Does this also expose Vince's penchant for hot-shotting, in that maybe the plan all along was to have him go over until he realized he'd have to have Cena lose at WrestleMania,
or was it
in a main event like that?
Was it John saying, "Nah, he'll be fine. It's WrestleMania. I need to win." Right? My character wouldn't do that. All those kids, all those Make-A-Wish kids, are gonna be disappointed if I turn to the dark side and, make it look like Bray got in my head. Right?
Yeah.
So Bray finishes, I've heard for so long, I can't remember what it's like to feel, but now it's time to rewrite my own story. And we flash to Bray is in the ring, in the chair, and he jumps up from the chair and smashes John Cena in the corner, brings him out, does the dancing with the body spot he did at WrestleMania 30 with John, puts him down in the Sister Abigail like he's about to take him out, but he lets Cena go out of it. Let Cena go / Cena escapes the way that actually happened at WrestleMania, and then Cena put him in the AA, and that was the end of the match, except that this time, Bray says, we both know that's not enough to end it, Superman, referencing that, Super Cena. Cena can't ever go down. We both know that's not enough to end it, Superman. But this is, and he hands him the chair. So we're going to relive the chair spot from WrestleMania. Will Cena hit Bray Wyatt and show the people that he's not really a nice guy, go to the dark side in a sense?
Right.
It was his acceptance of what he really is as,
wow,
not a nice person. And Cena takes the chair, and Bray says, 6 years ago, you made the wrong choice, cowboy. Fix it. Kneels on the ground, yells, fix it, and John swings at him. John goes there. After all of this, all that he's been through, John goes there. We already know his mind is compromised because he lost round 2. His mind is compromised. Bray's in his head. So Bray teleports away. He misses him wildly. So could this be John failing? Is he showing his true self? Is his mind compromised at this point? Is this a place where he is more vulnerable to this kind of manipulation? Or is it a place where he's more honest because we're in his psyche? Is this a place where he can't not do it because honestly it's what he wanted to do? There's no audience here to see him do it, so he can get away with it.
You're really messing me up right now. You know that?
I'm sorry.
Jesus Christ. Like, I hadn't even gotten anywhere near this deep on this stuff.
So
I've watched it 4 times, and I never got this deep on it.
So is it a shot at the booking of the time? What the right choice is, the right choice at the time for John to turn heel? Would the right choice at the time have been for John Cena to turn heel in this moment? It's obviously doable. John just did it. John did it right
after
here.
Punk? Were they too scared to do this kind of stuff and like right after Punk? And
so, but here's the thing. The question has an answer that you don't expect, Nick, because the question was, why didn't you turn heel, John? The answer is, you always were one. You always were a heel.
God damn it.
But you played a hero. And so to illustrate this, we go to WCW. All of a sudden we cut to that WCW intro, and Wyatt is in the ring, and now he's playing Eric Bischoff, right? He's intercut with Eric Bischoff. I want to point out he's Eric Bischoff, but he's wearing the NWO Wolfpack shirt, right? The red NWO.
Yeah.
Because he is red in a world of black and white.
God damn it.
Everything else is NWO black and white.
I'm gonna watch this 3 more times tonight. Completely different, with a whole different mindset now.
Oh, I ain't even done yet, sir.
Oh God. Okay.
I'm still in the setup. So he's in the ring. He's playing Eric Bischoff. We're at the moment where Eric Bischoff introduces Hulk Hogan as the NWO champ. I want to introduce the coolest guy to ever walk the face of wrestling earth, John Cena. And John comes out to Hulk Hogan's NWO music. Now remember, we already drew the parallel between John and Hulk, right? We've already said John was following the path of Hulk Hogan. So here he is again, following the path of Hulk Hogan. And what did Hulk Hogan do? He went, when WWF, when his career was failing, he went to WCW, and things still weren't going well for him. And what did he do? One of the biggest heel turns in history. Bash at the Beach, 96, turns heel. Find out that he is the third member of the NWO. Goes heel and has one of the greatest career resurrections of all time. One of the greatest heel factions of all time. Just completely flips the script on history for himself. So now we're positing, what if Cena did that? What if Cena did a Hulk Hogan and did a late career heel switch? What if you had done that at WrestleMania 30, John? Would it have led you here? Would it have led you to somewhere like this? Is it cyclical? Did Hogan's example lead Cena to become another Hogan with all the darkness that comes along with that, and ultimately he has to turn heel, only he didn't? Or is this Cena making fun of the fact that he went Hollywood because he's now Hollywood Hogan?
Right.
And one of the things that Cena mocked about The Rock was, you left, dude. You went to Hollywood, which Cena ultimately did. Cena ultimately went to Hollywood. He did everything that he said he despised, except this.
I can't anymore. Jesus Christ, it's too perfect and too paralleled. Oh my God, dude.
Another fun thing was, as Cena's walking in as Hulk Hogan, as NWO Hogan, you cut to the Vince puppet saying, "This is such good shit," which blew a lot of people online's mind because, of course, that's the famous line from the John Moxley interview on the Jericho podcast where he said, "Oh yeah, anytime that Vince has a dumb idea, he goes, 'This is such good shit.' He wants to stab me in the ass with a needle in this dumb angle, and he thinks it's such good shit." Here's Vince looking at Hollywood Hulk Hogan, a gimmick that almost brought down his company, and saying, "This is such good shit." Something he never allowed John Cena to do, turn heel. This is such good shit. Was that a shot at Moxley, or was that a shot at Vince? Or was that a shot was that an acknowledgement that sometimes good things happen when guys leave WWE? Was he drawing a parallel between Moxley and Hogan there? So, couple
Moxley and Hogan?
Both left the company and great things happened to them. Interesting place to put that. They didn't put that anywhere else with "This is good shit," but right as he comes out as Hogan. Thought it was interesting. Probably reading too much into it, but that's what this is for. So Cena comes out. I thought it was also interesting that he has the big gold belt with the NWO sprayed on it, but he tosses it away right off the bat, which is funny because he only ever held that belt 2 times for a total of 3.5 months. Once in 2008, once in 2009, and he dropped it to Edge both times. So he never really held that belt. He didn't really have much use for that belt. It was 14 of his 16 times, 14 of his 16 times he had the WWE Championship. 13, and then 1 was the Unified.
Right.
So he gets in the ring. Bray does the Scott Hall pose to him and says, "Give it up." And we get all these flashes of the NWO being really heelish, beating people up, and that's when John does exactly that, turns around and jumps Bray Wyatt and tackles him, takes him to the ground, and starts hitting him really hard in the head, starts beating him up. Is this him rejecting being a heel and attacking the guy who's trying to make him be a heel? Or is this him showing his true colors? He's now past that point of no return, and he is a heel now in this moment.
I think so.
That's the question.
You'll turn on anybody. You know, you're
sure
not to be trusted in any way.
Well, this is still a match between him and Bray Wyatt, right? So theoretically, it could be him trying to fight being a heel.
No, I was viewing it maybe.
But this is the interesting thing. If it's him fighting being a heel, think about what happens next. If he's trying to not be a heel, he jumps Bray, starts beating him up. All the puppets start screaming. And then we have insert shots of John Cena losing, failing. And I got most of them. Thank God for Up Rocks, because they had a few that I didn't catch. The clips that they used were the "If Cena wins, we riot" sign at ECW One Night Stand.
Yeah.
Edge cashing in Money in the Bank at New Year's Revolution 2006 on Cena.
Got that one.
That amazing match that he and Shawn Michaels had on April 23rd on Raw in 2007. Shawn beat him. Losing the WWE Championship to Batista at Elimination Chamber 2010. Losing the Miz at WrestleMania 27. The CM Punk kiss to Vince McMahon at Money in the Bank 2011, which is an iconic image, and people lost their minds because CM Punk on WWE TV again.
Exactly.
It is history. When they show new footage of CM Punk is when I'll actually lose my shit. Cena being mopey on the ramp. I'm quoting directly from Up Rocks here. Cena being mopey on the ramp after his WrestleMania 28 loss to The Rock. Losing the title unification match to Randy Orton at TLC 2013. Getting just utterly destroyed by Brock at SummerSlam 2014.
Suplex City. 16
Suplex City,
suplexes.
right? The origin of Suplex City. When he lost to AJ Styles at SummerSlam 2016, you see the armband left in the ring. That was the armband that we saw after the AJ Styles loss. When he did the Rock pose, putting over Roman Reigns after No Mercy 2017, where he held up Roman's hand and gave him the point, the same way that the Rock did. And then finally last year at WrestleMania, or 2 years ago at WrestleMania, when he lost to Undertaker, and that's the tombstone that you see. That's Undertaker tombstoning at WrestleMania. After as they put out on Up Rocks, he spent weeks goading on the Undertaker. So he's taking out these frustrations at his failures, or his maybe the moments that he was the most vulnerable. Now that's what is there. I think he's saying is what is using to beat up Bray here. That's what he's thinking about when he's beating up Bray. All these failures. He's failing again. He's losing again. And so he's going to man up against Bray. This is why I think that this is him trying to fight being a heel at this point. But all these failures are coming back in his head, and he looks down and realizes he's beating up Huskus. Even when he's fighting being a heel, he's still acting like a heel because he's beating up this innocent. This, Huskus is this, whatever you want to say the Huskus represents, whether it's Bray as a young up-and-coming star who wasn't comfortable with his body, or a young innocent kid who's got body issues and can't control himself. Whatever Huskus represents, he definitely represents innocence, naivete, lack of will, someone who's very easy to beat up, someone who a John Cena supposedly would never beat up. So the question is, was this him being mad at all of those times he could have gone heel and had a major second wind like Hogan did? Was he seeing that as another failure? Not going heel, was that another failure? Was that what made him mad here?
Damn. This is the one that I think I struggled with the most.
How about this?
What was it meant to mean when he attacked Bischoff?
Yes.
And it was essentially Hogan turning on Bischoff?
Kind of, but think about it this way. It was also John Cena turning on Bray. And because Bray is saying, look, John, at how powerful you could have been had you let me beat you at WrestleMania 30. Had you given in at WrestleMania 30. Look, this is the only offense you're getting in this entire match. It's the only time you're actually able to land strikes in this whole match is when you turn heel. Is when you act like a bad guy. When you act like a bully. When you give into your true self and admit this is what you want. So whatever Huskus represents, whether it's a future star that Cena is keeping down, kind of a representation of Bray in that sense, or an innocent, or the bullied, and what does he do? He looks at himself and realizes he's no longer in NWO gear. He's back in neon. right? He comes back to himself after he realizes he's beat up. No, let me now is that realizing who he is and going back to himself, or is he putting his, I guess, glamour back on? No. I'm still John Cena. I'm still a good guy, right? It's his self-perception. I'm still a good guy.
Yeah.
No. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to do that. That wasn't what I meant to do. That wasn't me.
I was tricked.
Right. So is that him? He still has the self-perception he's a good guy, even though Bray just showed him that when the chips are down, you're not. Twice. So I'm going to quote from Up Rocks again here, because this is just, I thought he brought it home here. I loved how he put this, and he said it better than I could. He said, Bray was right. He really was. We all were. All of us wrestling, and I'm going to insert, all of us wrestling fans who were calling for Cena's head for all those years. We all were. Cena started off with good intentions, lost himself somewhere along the way, got everything he ever asked for, and ended up here. Everybody loves him, but nobody likes him. Imagine only realizing who you really are when you're 42 years old. At the end of the career you sacrificed your mind, body, and soul for. All you have is ruthless aggression. That's your one trait. You are the heel.
Fuck.
And I kind of went beyond that, where not only is he the heel, he's a hypocrite.
Yeah.
This proves to him that he's a hypocrite. He's a fraud of a different sort. All his posturing, all his make-a-wish granting is hypocrisy.
It's grandstanding and acting.
Exactly. Because when the chips are down, you're going to put yourself and your needs over everybody else. And that's the moment the Fiend is allowed in. That's where the Fiend shows up, because he's finally let him in.
Damn.
That's where John Cena breaks. Where for the first time ever, John Cena gives up.
Where's your towel now, John?
Right, because he realizes that he sold his soul for this business.
Yeah.
Because the heel turn is symbolic, right? It would have been extending his career, but it also would have been admitting what he really is. But by not doing that, by giving into that hypocrisy, he sells his soul.
Damn.
And now he's lost to Bray, body, mind, and soul.
I'm out. I'm done. Jesus Christ. Well,
so,
I mean, and they accomplish this in less than 10 minutes.
Yeah. So that's the end of the third lesson. And there's just a little bit more of this match. The Fiend appears behind John. He mandible claws him, puts him down. Bray counts the 3. It's over. It's a squash. It's a slaughter, as Bray even said. And as he's cradling him in the Sister Abigail, you get that voiceover, John's final promo on SmackDown before WrestleMania. This WrestleMania match is going to accomplish what should have happened 6 years ago, ending the existence of the most overhyped, overvalued, overprivileged WWE superstar in existence. And of course, we now realize that means him. Wyatt has turned his words against him, which is just so much more effective and meaningful than just making Cena hit him with a chair. Like, he waited 6 freaking years, and he became more powerful than Cena could have ever dreamed. Well, become more powerful than you can possibly imagine, right? He became kind of godlike in a sense. He became almost like an arbiter of Cena's existence, or he knew well enough to stand back and let Cena ruin himself.
Right. Sometimes you just have to stop talking and let people tell you exactly who they are. It's one of my favorite little things to say.
And it's no coincidence this match broke all of these rules of wrestling matches. It's no coincidence this didn't go down like a wrestling match, because it wasn't a wrestling match. Bray has been, if you want to do a little bit of kayfabery, Bray has been tainted by Matt Hardy. Now, in kind of a kayfabe sense, right? Matt Hardy's, as a wrestler, his ability to step outside of the reality of wrestling. Bray's character has been dipped in that now, so he can take Cena out of the world of kayfabe and into this meta and metaphorical world that Matt also lives in, where Cena is subject to self-examination and self-scrutiny, which is the one thing he can't beat. It's the one thing he's got no defense for. It's the one thing he never built himself up. He's not Super Cena here.
No.
He can't be. He's naked against the void. So and that's the final beat. The final fear. Is this what Cena is his greatest fear? Is to be remembered as someone who ultimately could have been the hero, but was the heel, was the bad guy. The price of fame, selling your soul. The price of fame, losing your mind, body, and soul to just show your ruthless aggression.
Or that he was just a veneer. He was just a shell, an outer shell that was molded.
Right.
Acting and faking it the whole time, you know?
Sure. Molded from the inside and out. Outside by Vince, inside by Cena, trying to give Vince what he wanted.
Exactly.
Give the world what they wanted.
In exchange
right?
for millions,
what he thought they wanted based on his impression of what that was because of his childhood coming up in the 80s and seeing what the 80s archetypes were. That's what you had to be. So we end all this with the Fiend posing triumphantly over him, arms out. Cena vanishes from the ring. He just blinks out of existence. We don't know if he's dead. We don't know if he's back in the real world, but now he's tarnished forever and he's broken. He's in like in the corner, kind of shaking to himself and crying and pooping. We don't know if it's just that we can't see him. And then it ends with, "Let me in." Because at the end of all of this, what is the thesis that Bray Wyatt is giving us at the end of this? There's your heroes, kids. That's what your heroes are made of. Let me in. I'm real. What better for a cult leader to do than to break your greatest icon?
You know what my mind just shot to instantly when you said that? Tyler Durden.
Little bit.
You're not your khakis. You're not your job. You're not any of that stuff. Like that's his Pitt's big speech in Fight Club.
Sure. Even though
I'm kind of going there, and I'm trying to make. I'm not trying to say they're the same thing, but
no.
That's immediately where my head went to.
That movie's about male impotence and toxic masculinity, but this is something very different. This is about toxic masculinity too, but it's about John Cena's toxic masculinity. So okay, to sum up, we come to the end. We've gone through the whole thing and looked at what they were saying moment by moment. Let's look at the bigger picture here. What was Bray's purpose with this? And I mean that both as the character of Bray and Bray in real life, like in terms of why have this match. Was this to make up for WrestleMania 30 as is very on the surface level what they were saying it was? Was it in a bigger sense to try to kind of make amends for all of those matches, like the Nexus, like Rey Mysterio, like all the times that Cena went over people that he just didn't need to go over?
Yeah.
Was this meant to just be a contextualization of 17 years of John Cena as the man and therefore not as a match? Was this, because this was a squash, right? Not unlike Cena with Brock. So on another level, it's interesting because this is showing that John Cena is actually generous. He's going to put people over. Like ultimately at the end of the day, he did put Bray over. Here, he allowed himself to be broken down and utterly destroyed in this. In real life, he had a hand in it. He helped write this. So on one level, we can look at the character of John Cena and say, yeah, he finally got what was coming to him. Yeah, he's a bad guy. But on another level, he did this to himself, both in kayfabe and out of kayfabe. This was John Cena's
I'm almost
doing.
sitting here going, is this the most imaginative way that someone's ever retired?
He has actually hinted online that he might never be back. Which, if this is a way, if he retires, this will be the greatest retirement.
This will go down in history as the best ever. I'm going to be real clear, real quick, and I'm going to let you finish. We're getting along here, but I don't ever want to see John Cena in WWE again after this. And I don't mean that as like spitefully or mean. It's like it'll kill the whole thing if he just shows back up next week like fucking Undertaker did. And like if he just shows up and be like, "Oh, you wanted me heel? Well, I'm heel now, bitch," and hits him with a chair, and I would just be like, "No, why did you do this for? Why did you do this for?"
If John Cena shows up and he's gone to the dark side and he's heel, I think they could do some interesting stuff with that. And that's actually because here's the thing: what does Bray do? He turns people. He turned Finn. He turned Seth. He made Daniel Bryan into a cleaner, more streamlined version of himself. What's going to happen with John Cena now? He's now let the Fiend in. More than anybody else has, he let the Fiend in. So what happens to him now in storyline? What happens to him now? Is he gone for a while? And when he comes back, what are we going to be? Another thing that I was curious about was, what does this say to the kids in the crowd? Most of the kids that love John Cena have moved on, right? They've grown up. They moved on. It's safer to do this sort of thing to John Cena now. But the kids that still worship John Cena, what is their takeaway from this? The kids that are going to watch this, are they going to look at this and see this as a fallen hero? Are they going to see this? I mean, is it going to be something that they perceive that he has beaten himself in this, or that he has failed himself, that he's shown that he's a bad guy in this, or this character is ultimately a heel, or that's what he perceives himself as, which may not even be the case. This could be his self-perception of himself, and that's how Bray beat him, was because he knew that John's old self-perception, his own weaknesses, would beat him for him. And maybe John isn't really that bad of a guy. It's just, you worry. You ever done that, Nick? Where like, you're at the grocery store and it says, give 5% to the homeless on the credit card reader, and you say no. And you have that, God, am I a bad guy? Is that what beat John Cena here? He's not really a bad guy, but he's worried that he is. What do the kids take away from this? Do they perceive those nuances? Obviously, I don't think they do. But was this a way of scaring those kids? Look, kids, this is what happens to your icons. This is iconoclasm at its finest, is breaking these icons, showing your heroes fallen. What do you do now with this?
My gut instinct says that this wasn't for them. Sorry, kids.
I agree.
This doesn't involve you. We got some business to handle with Mr. Cena.
Agreed, but
if you want a new hero, Roman's over there.
But kids watched this.
Oh yeah.
What did they take away from it?
I don't know. I'd love to hear from some.
I'd be fascinated. I came across Lance Archer tweeted out a really awesome Japanese word the other day called namahage, and it's actually why he used to scare kids in Japan. It's actually a cultural thing there, where
it's like the boogeyman, right?
Kind of, but being exposed to things that make you afraid when you're young.
Yeah.
It's basically like a Japanese version of It Builds Character, except that it actually is based in some sort of psychological truth, which is, if you're exposed to things that make you afraid when you're young, you learn how to process and deal with those things so that you're not affected by them when you get older. You learn how to
face your fears.
You face your fears.
Yeah.
You work through scary situations. Could this have been, is the Fiend like namahage for children in America, where they learn to face their fears, they learn to see their idols fallen and how to process that? So that's how I took this.
I feel like it's more of an expose of the people that you idolize as heroes are not really heroes after all. They're just fake celebrities.
Sure. Do you know how many kids might actually turn to Bray after this because of that?
All of them.
Bray just beat their dude.
Yep.
Clean, because he in a cool way.
The other irony about all this for me, they've spent the last at least 3, if not 5 years pushing Roman Reigns to the moon when you had Bray Wyatt sitting here the whole time.
But Bray isn't a guy who's going to be the man. And that's kind of one of the things that this was about too, is there's a type that is the man, and Cena sold his soul to become that.
Okay.
And Bray took whatever chance he could, just because there weren't a lot of chances for him. For guys who want to be the man, who could be the man, there's millions of chances.
Marshall in the chat just said, I talked to a kid in Target a few months ago who was probably 4 years old, and his favorite wrestler was Bray Wyatt.
There you go. There you go.
Damn.
It's working. He's got the whole world in his hands. But again, how many times could Bray have been booed out of winning the Royal Rumble? Roman did it. Still the man 4 years later. You know what I mean? Like,
it depends on who you ask.
It's different. It's different when you look a certain way. So basically, a couple things I want to talk about at the end of this.
Yeah.
One of the questions I had was this in some ways a shot at Vince and his culture in WWE? Because obviously Bray Wyatt has been on the bad side of that a couple times. Was this not just about John Cena, but about WWE as a company and how Vince runs it? Was it a shot at Vince in some ways? And I called out a couple of times where I thought he took a shot at Vince's policies, Vince's expectations, the things that Vince asked of his wrestlers.
Yeah.
Because if Cena was a bad guy, he was molded by Vince.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely a secondary point that I thought was made here.
And the timing of it. Look, I mean, coming out of the 80s, or going into the late 80s and, turn of 1990, you had the transition from WWF in the Northeast to WWF happening. You had the rise of like NWA and WCW kicking off. And you had Hogan and I guess Flair too down in NWA and eventually at WCW. But I mean, you had like 2 or 3 guys that were like the guys. They were the personalities, the figures. Nobody could touch them. And I'm looking at this like post-acquisition of WCW in 2003, post-invasion, ruthless aggression birth, he needed another Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
And that was basically, so yeah.
Well, at the
did
time,
Vince
to be clear,
McMahon, was he Saruman building the Arukai? Did he need to find another Hulk Hogan to mold into this larger-than-life character and have as a puppet? I wonder if the puppets are meta here, because I'm going, Jesus Christ. The more I think about this, I'm going to go insane. Is John Cena ultimately a molded puppet of Vince McMahon for the last 20 years?
Ironic that Vince is himself a puppet in this, but I think it's less like that. Vince was looking for another Stone Cold because no one was ever more successful than Stone Cold, but his career was so short.
I don't know if that's more
ratings.
Stone Cold or the lightning in the bottle of the time frame of having DX, Rock, Stone Cold all in the same place at the same time.
Which is where I was going to go with that.
Yeah.
Which was Stone Cold was not something that Vince expected. It's not if Vince had his druthers what he would have created as his top guy. He just happened to be there and it worked. And Vince knew how to roll with it, and he was kind of forced to roll with it because that's what he had. It was the hand he was dealt.
But it was not Hulk Hogan.
But it was not. But Vince, when he's left to his own devices, wants a Hulk Hogan. He wants someone who is myopic, self-obsessed, body guy, just aggressive, alpha male. That's what he wants. That's his dude. And that's what Cena was able to give him. So
Stone Cold was the beer-drinking, white trash redneck that the audience wanted and fell in love with, right?
And still had enough traits that Vince liked to be able for Vince to go, yeah, I like that guy. He's got some brass balls on him.
Yeah.
So I want to finish this by talking about what, in a larger sense, I think the Firefly Funhouse represents, what Bray might think it represents, where we might see Cena go from here. And is kind of asked, like, is this something that Bray could do? Like, will we see another Firefly Funhouse sketch like this where Bray does the career? Hey, it's time to do Randy Orton. Let's do Randy Orton's career. Who are you really, Randy? Like, I don't know if it's going to work as well.
Or does the Funhouse like fold in on itself, like at the end of some horror movies we've seen before? Like the
like
sequence
the
exact Poltergeist. Like the sequence has completed. Now it's just it is done, right?
So and this is the thing I wanted to say is, right, Hellraiser. It goes
the
back
Hellraiser box folds up and
goes in. Bray Wyatt yesterday tweeted out a quote by Aldous Huxley, and the quote was, "Maybe this world is another planet's hell."
Ooh, fuck.
And I tried to find where Huxley said that. It's just a quote that's attributed to him. I believe it's actually initially it's been used in Hindu religion for a while. Something very similar to that, where the thought that maybe this existence is hell,
this plane,
and right, and we're only here. What is the purpose of hell? What is the classical purpose of hell? It's a place to be sent, to be cleansed of your sin, to repent, to pay for your sins for all time. But ultimately the concept was you go there to be cleansed of sin. Is the Firefly Funhouse, okay, abandon all hope, ye who exit here. Are we in hell? Are we in a sort of hell? Are our minds our own hells? Did John Cena go to his personal hell? Did he exit into his own personal hell? And was that him exorcising his demons? Was that him atoning for his sins? Specifically WrestleMania 30, but all the other ones that he found while he was there. Did he atone for his sins? Was he cleansed of his sins at the end of this? Did he go through hell? And at the end, was he cleansed? And I think about that because think about Bray. He went through this. He went through this whatever this was and came out the other side more powerful than ever. Yeah. Did John Cena come through? Seth went through. He came out a bad guy. Finn went through. He came out a bad guy. Daniel Bryan went through. He came out more powerful than ever before. Did John Cena go through this?
Because his soul is pure? Is that what the lesson is?
Or was purified? Right? He became very ascetic when he came out. I mean that in terms of like monk-like. He lost all his hair, right? Which is often a symbol of atonement, losing your hair.
Yeah.
He atoned for whatever sins he had. He atoned for his heel turn. John Cena never truly gave in to his dark side.
Yeah.
And so here we are, John Cena being forced to face all of his internal darkness that he's never been confronted with. At the end of this, did he give in to his dark side, or was he cleansed of his sins in the hell of his own psyche? And that's...
If Cena comes out with a shaved head and a toga, I'm going to lose my mind. Maybe in the best way possible. Like, if he comes out on the... Like, one, I want to be clear. Other than, like, legend spots 5 years from now, I hyping up a WrestleMania thing, I that needs to be Cena's retirement.
I don't think it's... I think it's...
Lest he suffer the same fate as Undertaker of the last 3 years.
He's already pretty much out. When was the last time we saw him on WWE TV until WrestleMania build? He's off doing movies.
Yeah. We've
got this whole crisis thing going on right now. Like, there's other stuff for Cena to do. He doesn't have to be there. It would be better if he stayed away.
Yeah.
For a while. And he can, and it's no harm, no foul. WWE's proved they don't need him. He proved he doesn't need WWE. This is a great moment to have him take a step back for a while. And when he comes back, we'll see what he is. But I just want to end with that. I just want to end this with that quote I started off with, which is Jeremiah 33:8, which is, I will cleanse them from all their iniquity by which they have sinned against me. And I will pardon all their iniquities by which they have sinned against me and by which they have transgressed against me. And Ezekiel 37:23, they will no longer defile themselves with their idols or with their detestable things or with any of their transgressions. But I will deliver them from all their dwelling places in which they have sinned, and I will cleanse them. And they will be my people, and I will be their God. Nicely done, Bray Wyatt. Great stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the Busted Wide Open breakdown of the Firefly Funhouse match. I hope that was as fun for you as it was for us to put it together.
I'm not going to sleep for 3 days trying to undo this codex that you've put in my hands so elegantly that my mind is spinning right now. I can tell. Because and I'm glad I'm glad we didn't talk about this. I'm glad we didn't like collab on this, whatever you want to call it, because I've had so much fun going through this. I can tell from the chat.
It was a blast.
They're and for all of you that are listening that didn't listen to this live, holy shit, right?
Oh, I'm sorry guys. I'm looking at the chat. I'm sorry guys.
Andy's going to need to lie down. Will says he needs to take a piss and stare out some windows.
Yeah. Just to clarify, I'm well aware this was over-examination of the whole thing. And probably when they made this, they intended about 1/10 of everything that I got into in this. I probably went deep on this. But here's the great thing, and this is actually, another little kind of coda to this. The great thing about art, and I do truly feel this is art. Anyone who's bashing this as a wrestling match, it's not a goddamn wrestling match.
Yeah.
It's a piece of art. It's a piece of video art about wrestling and about one particular wrestling character. And the thing about art is it's open to interpretation. It's different every time that you look at it. The more you think about it, it can change and evolve, and it can evolve with you. It can change depending on your perception. So that's the wonderful thing about this. It is all of those things. It is absolutely, inarguably, I think, a work of art. And I am so happy they put it on. I couldn't be more tickled with it. I'm just glad to be in the space where I am right now with it, which is there's no aftermath, right?
Yeah.
Cena hasn't come back the next episode. He's like, I'm fine. Everything's cool. Wasn't that weird, kids?
Well, I mean,
right?
let's see what happens on SmackDown tomorrow.
I'm saying it hasn't been ruined yet. We're in that perfect place where it's on its own. It's able to just sit there on a mantelpiece as the finishing statement.
Yeah, put it in an urn and put it away like they put the freaking Ark away in Raiders. Like, just pack it away in some warehouse and do not reference it. Don't
ever watch Indiana Jones 4 because it ruins it. And that's what I'm saying here is, for me, I don't ever want to watch Indiana Jones 4 because I know they ruined the end of Raiders. It's the same thing with this. I'm always going to be able to look back at this moment and say, man, there was that time when I could just have this, and this was the period at the end of the statement, and it was mwah. And maybe they do pay this off. Maybe this is never tarnished. Maybe this is never really messed up by history. That would be nice.
Yeah.
But for right now, in this moment, that leaves us in a really awesome spot.
Yeah.
It leaves us in a really awesome place in terms of storyline, in terms of character development, in terms of for both Cena and for Bray. So, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, there you go.
Knocked it out of the park, brother. Well done, sir.
A lot of fun.
Well done indeed. There you go, guys. April 2020 in the bag. Ian's going all resizey on me again, so I'm trying to adjust it on the fly here. But we made it all the way through without that.
We made it.
First and foremost, thank you all for hanging out with us in the live chat. I know my mind is blown right now, and I'm going to try to get all of this out here without completely losing my train of thought, and I am immediately going to go watch the Firefly Funhouse match at least 2 more times. Thank you, Ian, for all of that effort and for doing all of that research and watching it a bajillion times in order to get all of that out for us. But I know you're into that shit too. So
this was going since that match happened. This has been spinning around there. So, and again, thank you to all of the source, everything I read on the internet. Again, especially Paul Bradley at Fansided, Brandon Stroud at Up Rocks. Great resources, great minds thinking about this too. Some really good, insightful thoughts. So yeah, great stuff all around.
And in case your minds weren't blown enough, tune in next week when we bring you Nick Booking 2.0.
Oh man,
Lord. I cannot wait. In an evil, sadistic. I can't wait to absolutely bludgeon Sir Ian Dangerous over the head with the blunt force trauma that will be Nick Booking 2.0.
Oh, boy.
Thank you guys all for being amazing Patreons. Thank you guys for always hanging out with us. Shout out to Kyle for the $30 in the tip jar again, man. That was unnecessary. This is a bonus. But thank you anyway. We will see you guys, I guess, Saturday for recapping. But we'll be in the Discord chat tomorrow night for SmackDown at 8 p.m. Eastern. Our show on Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. But my name is Nick Howell. You can find me over on Twitter at Data Center Dude.
And I am Sir Ian Dangerous. You can find me on Twitter at Sir Ian Dangerous.
But by God,
somebody stop the damn match!
This show is part of the Orbital Jigsaw Network. For more episodes, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher Radio. For details and show notes from each episode, check us out, orbitaljigsaw.com.